Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 348 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show is sponsored by Touched by Type 1 and the Contour Next 1 blood glucose meter. I'd like you to go to contournext1.com. Check it out. Really look into what this little meter does. I love it. Arden's been using it forever. It's fantastic. contournext1.com. You may be eligible for a free meter. You'll find out there. And of course, Touched by Type 1. The greatest organization in the world, my opinion. touchedbytype1.org. Go see what they're doing for people living with type 1 diabetes. Okay, this episode's going to take a tiny bit of explaining. It was recorded in August of 2019 with the intention of putting it right out for the beginning of the school year. And then that didn't work out right away. I wanted it out because it's really good, but I couldn't make the timing work. And then I thought, I'll just sit on it. I guess my idea was to put it out like midway through the school year, and then people could have some time to, ruminate over the ideas before they went back to school. And then the coronavirus happened. And I sat on it again because I thought, are people going back to school? I don't even know. And now I wish I didn't do any of that because as I listened back to edit this, it's so much more about advocating for yourself than it is about school. In the middle of the episode, we go off of school for a minute and talk about looping. And when we do that, you're going to hear my initial thoughts about looping, which are, of course, now almost a year old. I think you should find the other looping episodes if you find that part interesting. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I'm excited because I don't really remember why we're doing this, and I love those the best.
Well, I originally wrote in about how the schools, I'm a teacher myself, and how the schools vary in the level of care that across, even the county where I live and across the nation, I'm sure across the state. So I just think it's really interesting how there isn't like a streamlined way of how they handle diabetes in schools.
Cool. Listen, you've just done the entire setup for the show. Thank you.
Yay. You're welcome. My name's Melissa Cass. I have a 7-year-old type 1 who was diagnosed when she was 4. We luckily caught it before it became too extreme, I guess you could say. We actually never were admitted to the hospital. We were just given a syringe and a vial of insulin and taught, a binder of stuff, 5 hours, and sent on our way. So we learned a lot. I learned a lot on my own. And here we are 2.5 years later doing, pretty well, I would say.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let me orient my brain. So tell me one more time. Your daughter was 7, right?
She is 7.
She was 7.
4, yeah, at the time.
4, 7, 3 years. And her name is?
Chloe.
All right. Interesting that they never admitted you at all.
No.
Tell me about the process of the teaching. Did they literally send you home right away, or did they sit you in a room for a while?
Oh, they set us in a room for a while. So we went to the pediatrician for what I thought was a UTI. My mom suggested that I test for diabetes because she kind of did a little internet research and some of her symptoms led to that. Thank God she mentioned that because I don't think I would have ever asked. Okay. The pediatrician, I of course fed her or had her drink an entire juice box before going in so that she would go to the bathroom, got in there, tested her blood sugar, and she was 468. The pediatrician at the time kind of just looked at me, got up, and said, I need to call Children's Hospital. We're close to Los Angeles. So he said, I need to call Children's Hospital. I'll be right back. He left. I kind of sat there for a few minutes, not really understanding what was going on. I ended up getting up and leaving. I took both my girls and we left. We went about our day. He called me and said, where are you? And I said, I'm going to the mall. And he said, well, you need to go get blood work done. So we stopped at a hospital, got some blood work done. I just didn't understand the severity of what was going on at that point, and no one was really saying anything. So he was trying to get us into Children's Hospital because she she had no ketones and they weren't super worried about her. It was a Monday. They couldn't see us until Thursday morning of that week. Wow. So Thursday morning at 5 a.m., we drove in, sat in a small room for about 5 hours with a diabetes educator who herself was also type 1. And she literally went through a binder of information. And like I said, I think the first thing she did, though, was really hand me a syringe and a vial of insulin and said, here you go, you got to do this. And I was like, what?
All right, so
now?
I have to ask the question that I'm imagining everyone listening is thinking. You're in the office. The blood sugar comes back. The doctor doesn't communicate well, says, I have to call Children's Hospital, leaves the room, and you literally pick up and walk out at some point before he comes back?
Yeah, I did. He didn't say I needed to hang out. I honestly did not understand what was going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, he said he had to call Children's Hospital, but I don't know. I guess it just didn't register to me. Like I said, the severity of it. I mean, she seemed fine. I don't know. I just really didn't get it. And the ironic part is I had a friend from high school who I knew her daughter was type 1. And I know she had gone through a lot just with finding out of that. And I don't know. I guess it just didn't resonate. I think maybe I was in denial. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
I can't decide. Obviously I wasn't there, but I can't decide if you just like disconnected his statement from you. Like you're like, oh, he's got phone calls to make. We're done. I got to go. Or if you were just like, okay, this is terrible and let's get out of here. Like
no, I don't. I feel like I don't think I don't feel like in my heart, I felt like it was really a terrible thing. I just thought, oh, she has type 1 diabetes and now she's, going to need to eat differently. Or I didn't understand it.
That's so weird.
And yeah, I don't know. I think if I was scared, I would have stayed.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to paint you as like, you were like, better things to do than this. No, totally. I'm not saying that. It's just amazing that he wasn't able to, I don't know, to impart upon you what was happening exactly. Like, do you think it took him by surprise?
Yes. He was actually my pediatrician too. And to be honest, when the number came up on the meter at the office, I could tell by his face that he was, disappointed or concerned. And I had my oldest daughter, Avery, in there, who is definitely was really worried and kind of freaking out herself about even just the finger stick, Mm-hmm. And so I just think it was an overwhelming thing. And he had said to me, it's presenting itself as type 1 diabetes. He didn't actually say this is type 1 diabetes. So I just kind of felt like there would have been I don't know what I thought.
I got to tell you, Melissa, I've recorded about 300 of these and you have finally said something completely different than anyone else has ever said. So usually people's stories are fairly, similar.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I get it. And you know what? And that's what I'm saying. I kind of feel like I had that. I left, I got blood work, the Children's Hospital couldn't see us. I have a neighbor, ironically, who also has a type 1 daughter who was a little bit older. I rarely see her because she's a nurse. She works at night and sleeps during the day. And so I happened to run into her the next morning and I said, hey, can I talk to you? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, the doctor said that, Chloe is presenting with type 1. And she said, what do you mean? And she's like, can I come in and have, a cup of coffee? Could we talk? And from that's when I think it all kind of hit me. She just, because she cried immediately and said, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And
you're like, why are you crying? We went to the mall. It's good.
Totally. And she just said, things can go from bad to worse really quickly. And so, I mean, the pediatrician had said, to feed her low carb stuff, to not give her anything that, so I was giving her low carb meals. I mean, he had given me some pieces of advice. He was really frustrated with Children's. He didn't understand why they weren't able to see us. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they felt like she was as high of a risk. I don't know. I don't really know what they're...
And I realize that's a busy part of the country, but in my mind, hey, we're diagnosing someone with type 1 diabetes. They go right to some sort of informative care situation, right?
Right.
Even if they're not presenting with any in the moment health risks. But not to say that a 4-something blood sugar is not a health risk, obviously. But
Right.
that's fascinating. Was she honeymooning or was it?
Yes.
She was. So she'd bounce around in the beginning?
Yeah. When we got there, they tested her at Children's Hospital. They tested her. She was 80. And they looked at me and they said, "Did you give her insulin?" And I was like, no, I don't even have insulin. No, I didn't. And then, at that moment, I thought, is this a dream? Like, did they diagnose something that isn't real, And so, unfortunately, they said, no, she does have it, and then from that moment on, they gave us I feel like they should have told me I needed to bring sugar, with me to the hospital because I live about an hour from Children's Hospital, but LA traffic could be 3 hours. So
2 days.
I really, all I was thinking was they're going to put me in a car for 3 hours and not let me have any sort of sugar to help her because she crashed the first insulin dose. She crashed pretty hard. She didn't really need, in fact, we didn't even end up needing long acting for, a few months. Yeah. So.
Well, that's a tough time. I mean, the honeymoon time is crazy. There's a lot here to unpack, and this isn't even what we're really going to talk about today. So I just think I get your because you have hindsight frustration, right? Now you know more about diabetes, so you can look back on that moment and think like, how is this possible? This is what you said to me, or sent me home. Like that's count your carbs, put in your insulin. Right. No, possibly it might not be necessary all the time, and I don't even know how you would communicate that if that was the case. Like that's why honeymooning is such a crazy, like time. Just to need insulin so badly one day, and 4 hours later at the next meal not need it is maddening. It very much is.
It is. And I remember reading somewhere that someone said that it's almost better when they're not honeymooning, so at least you know what they need, like you kind of can guess what they need.
Yeah, I'm down
You're
with
not,
that. Yep.
So.
Yeah, there's a lot more consistency that comes when the pancreas just gives up.
And, yep.
Yeah, and stops making random insulin. Okay, so so she's not a school-age kid yet at that point.
Not yet.
Right.
Nope.
And so how long between diagnosis and kindergarten?
Luckily, the summer. She was diagnosed in February. She started kindergarten in August of that same year. So I had the summer to really get my act together.
And how much of your act did you get together in that time? Like, what was your like, I guess I should ask real quickly, are you using MDI still?
No. We're looping. We've been looping since May, but I requested a CGM after the first meeting at Children's Hospital. We had a Dexcom within a month of being diagnosed.
Gotcha. Luckily.
So that was amazing. I actually thank God for that. And then we were MDI for about 6 months after that. And then we got the Animus pump before she started kinder. That was my goal, was to get her on a pump, at least for kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then, of course, months later, we find out Animus is no longer. So we are now using the Omnipod.
Gotcha. It's funny. I had the same exact feeling. Like Arden was diagnosed when she was 2, but in the run up to kindergarten, I thought, I can't send her to school with needles. Right. I don't know why I thought that at the time. It's just how it struck me. I was like, I'm not letting some like rando nurse like poke my kid with a needle all the time.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's funny now I look back, I know those people because they live in my town, and they, they
would have been fine.
I'm sure it would have been fine. Yeah. But in the moment I just thought, well, this is not okay. Like I don't want her to have to let someone else give her a shot. And so we went to the Omnipod, when Arden was like 4, getting like ready for when she was 5 and going off to school. But so she gets to kindergarten. Your daughter gets to kindergarten,
right?
And is the integration as seamless as you were hoping?
You know what? I think I was a little naive in that part too. I myself actually teach kindergarten, and we have a really great school. I didn't initially have a 504. I just kind of went in thinking like, oh, everyone's going to take really good care of her, and they've got a plan. She's not the first type 1. She had an amazing kindergarten teacher who followed her on Dex. I did request that the health tech follow her also. I think that, I am in the middle of teaching. I can't stop and like say, hey, she's dropping fast. You need to do something. So it was seamless until about January. Everything seemed to be working just fine. And then our health tech, see, we don't have nurses at our site. We actually have one nurse for about 4,500 students in the district where my kids go to school. And she oversees the health techs. And the health tech at our site is amazing, is very great at communicating and very great at listening to what I want to do and what I think we should do with her. But, the nurse always wants to make a call. And
For those of you who are wondering why I have recently switched from Skype to Zoom to record my podcasts, this is one of those reasons. Anyway, good time for the ContourNext1.com conversation. Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Wait till you hear. First of all, the web address, Contour, ContourNext1, ContourNext1.com. When you get there, what you're going to see is a lighthouse. It's got some lights coming out of it. Some are green, some are red, or some are yellow. That's a little bit of a sly send up for one of the systems within the meter to help you know where your blood sugar's falling visually. For the middle of the night where red might make more sense to you or green may make you feel comfortable if you can't really wrap your head around the numbers in the moment. Anyway, that's a tiny part of this meter. Biggest part of this meter, it's crazy accurate. That's why I love it the most. If you took away everything else that it was and it was this accurate, I'd still be down. Like, you could make this accuracy in a shoe. Like, pretend there was a shoe that was a meter, but it was as accurate as the Contour Next one. I'd carry the shoe around just to use the meter. Luckily, you don't have to do that, of course, because the Contour Next one is small, handheld, beautiful bright light, nice, easy to read display, and test strips that actually you can go back twice, if you have to get blood. If you miss the first time, don't get enough, you don't waste the test strip. Second chance. Saves a lot of money on test strips. Anyway, I love this thing. It's actually got an app with it that works for we got the iPhone or the Android. If you guys are interested in seeing your numbers from your blood glucose meter like that, it can be really helpful. But all this is explained at ContourNext1.com. You can also see the meter there. It's Arden's meter. She's been using it for quite some time now. Anyway, give them a check. ContourNext1.com. While you're on the internet getting yourself a state-of-the-art blood glucose meter, please check out touchedbytype1.org. Beautiful organization. I'm going to do it right now. Wow, it'd be nice if I could type. Touchedbytype1.org. Beautiful mission to elevate awareness of type 1 diabetes, to raise funds, to find a cure, and to inspire those with diabetes to thrive. That ought to be enough for you to check out more. They have amazing programs, awareness, annual conferences. They do this beautiful bowling program. They have a dance program called Dancing for Diabetes, which is just wonderful. They send these boxes out to people who have been newly diagnosed. Check that out. It's really a terrific org. Really, really, really. I can't say really enough because I mean every really I say. So I should just say it for the rest of the podcast. But I won't. Touchedbytype1.org. There are links in your show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com for Touched by Type 1 and, of course, the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Okay. What else do I want to tell you here? This isn't an ad, though. So let me find what I want to tell you. And then before the podcast gets going again. And then I'll kill the music and make talkie with you and tell you. Ready? So up until this point, we're just learning about Melissa and her daughter's story, but soon we're going to talk about really detailed stuff about advocating for yourself in school. Then we trend away for a little while and talk about Loop, and then we come back and kind of double down on the school stuff. I actually like the second part of the school conversation because it really feels like it catches a rhythm, and I mean, the whole thing's great. Don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to say is that in the middle, when we stop to talk about Loop, you're going to be hearing my reactions from a year ago, and they're not the same now. So if you're interested in more, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, scroll down to where it says algorithm pumping, and you can use an arrow to move around there to see all of the episodes that we've done about looping at this point. Me, I guess, and the people I've had on. That sounded strange, but let's get back to it right now. We get Melissa back on Skype and keep going. Did that dog sit on your phone or something? What happened there?
So sorry. No,
Don't
it
be
was
sorry.
me. I was getting another call and I tried to cancel it, but it didn't work.
Don't worry.
It could be but anyways, so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. So you were saying that the nurse was I
Was
don't want to say,
overseeing.
but was she overreacting, like wanting to do too much in the moment, or?
I just think that, my approach to type 1 was kind of a lot of what like I didn't want to give her 15 carbs if she's, just gradually going down,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to always give her as much insulin as the pump was recommending if I knew she was dropping, and there were just certain things she would question my decisions because I think she was very black and white where it says you need to do 1.1 units. I want to do 1.1 units, but I was like, well, but she needs a little bit more or she needs a little bit less.
Yeah. And so she's following the orders. Again, it's
Right.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like you said 15 carbs a second ago, like doctor says, hey, if you get low, 15 carbs, 15 minutes,
Right.
Check again, which was really spectacularly good advice a long time ago when people didn't have this technology, because, what if I am on my way to passing out? I guess the measure was 15 carbs might be enough to save your life if your blood sugar is falling really far. And check again to really give it time to work. But you can see so much more now with your Dexcom, and you can make more fine decisions with your pump, and it's a different world. But the orders still get written like that from the doctors. And then I can see the nurse at school thinking, look, this becomes a legal issue at some point. Like the doctor wrote this, I'm supposed to do what the doctor said.
Right.
And then you're stepping in and being like, no, use more, use less. Don't do that yet. And that makes them nervous. So how did you get her, or did you not get? I'm assuming her, but I shouldn't have.
Yeah, no, it is a her. You know what? I think over time, she trusted me as a parent to make good decisions. I wasn't being radical. I wasn't like, oh, she's 59, just let her ride it out. I
light incense and have her drink olive oil.
Totally. I really honestly think she knew I had my act together. I mean, I really, because of my experience in the beginning, I felt like, and as an educator too, I felt like I needed to read and hear everything, Mm-hmm. And so I really did read and hear everything. I went to a diabetes conference. We went to City of Hope and heard I just really engrossed myself with a lot of education on it and how to treat it. And so I think I proved myself to her that I wasn't, so she kind of backed off to the point where she just didn't actually involve herself at all anymore, which is good and not good,
Well, before you move on, I want to say that what you just said is, I think, a staple of working with the school, right? It's that you have to, you said prove yourself. I think that's right. Like, I think you have to have a few experiences over and over again where the nurse finally goes, hey, you know what? Everything this person has said is working out the way they said it was going to, because they don't know you. And they do know every other kid in the school, right? And a lot of those other kids have diabetes too. And some of their parents don't know what they're talking about. And so they're not going to take just someone's word that they know better. And how else are you going to do that? You can't tell them. I mean, you can't sit down and, you know what I mean? Like if I was, a great artist, I couldn't sit down and explain to you I was a great artist. I'd have to paint something and let you see it. And so I think that's what this is that you just have to live together for a little while, build some trust, and then grow on it. But what do you think happens in that moment? Where is it just this, is it a parental defense? Is it what happens the first time you say to the nurse, look, it's 0.1, not 0.2, and she disagrees with you? Do you feel like, oh my God, that woman's going to kill my kid? Or what's that visceral feeling?
You know what? I initially let her in the beginning, I was like, okay, we'll do what you want to do. And then because I kind of knew the outcome wasn't going to be what she expected it to be, you know what I mean? And like I said, so the way that it works is that there's a nurse that oversees the health tech. And the health tech is someone I truly 100% trust. And I think if she was making the call, I would have been more apt because I feel like she knows my kid really well. She's the one in charge of her all school year. But the nurse is just kind of sporadically in and out of the school. And she has, like I said, 4,500 different students to, oversee. Right. And I did initially let her kind of make that call. I didn't like it. And then either her blood sugar was high or her blood sugar was low. And I kind of, let her, like I said, I think over time she kind of said, okay, I think she succumbed to the fact that like maybe I knew a little bit more about my kid health-wise, medically, than maybe she did textbook-wise.
It's interesting that you both were in the same situation initially. The nurse didn't know or trust you, and you didn't know or trust the nurse. Well, good.
Well, and absolutely, and I think, I mean, and to be honest, I think that's what and this is why it's like baffling to me, because I feel like everyone's situation, I mean, everyone's needs and what they want the school to be, and what, the kids are able to perform and what they're willing to provide. Each family is really different. And I feel like the school district that my daughter is at, they don't quite, the lady who oversees the health nurses is not medically trained at all. She has no medical background, yet she makes some medical decisions that I feel are not smart and not, safe. Yeah. And so this hierarchy of like who's in charge of who is really weird. And I feel like the nurses out of everyone should be the one making any medical calls, not, some district employee with an admin credential, just because, I don't know. It's just really weird. And
their plate wasn't as full when they made the position. They're like, hey,
right. I mean,
he can do it. Yeah, right.
Let me make I don't know. That's the, issue that we're having now, is that we have someone in charge who really doesn't know diabetes and then isn't really willing to work with us. Like a couple of us, our parents in our district, are trying to get them to write a diabetes handbook and kind of update the training that they're providing the health techs, as well as there's 3 individuals at each site that are supposed to be trained with diabetes care. And one of them is the health tech, which they're great. They deal with it day to day. The second one is like a secretary who, in my opinion, shouldn't be part of their job description. They're answering phone calls and helping parents, and they should, I get if it's like a Band-Aid. Yeah. I mean, cool. They scrape their knee. Great. But not measuring carbs and insulin and that stuff. And then the third one is admin, the principal at the site, which to me is I don't know. So it's so crazy. I feel the health tech at our school is amazing. If she was there every day, all day, I would feel very comfortable. But when she's not there or she's at lunch, it's kind of like, oh God, please let this hour be great. Or let us have a good day. Or I always have someone locally as a backup, because it's scary not, to have someone in charge of your kid that doesn't understand it,
Yeah. So you're really explaining a situation that led me to, texting with diabetes, like how to talk to Arden and eliminate other people from the circle.
Right.
And because what you're describing, if from your perspective, is simple, right? And it was my perspective too. Like, my kid's there, she's, using insulin. This is all could be very dangerous. You really all should really understand. But then I stopped and looked at it from their perspective, and I was like, okay, this is a bureaucracy, this place. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, they can't get the things right sometimes that they need to get right around teaching kids. And now I'm asking them to make these medical plans. And I thought, what's more reasonable? That I'm going to fix the political and social and hierarchy structure of a school, or if I just look at this whole thing and think, how can I handle this and take them out of it? Because I don't, because everything you're saying to me seems very doable. It seems altruistic. I hope you get it accomplished. But by the time you get it accomplished, your kid's going to be in 11th grade.
Totally.
Right?
I agree.
So
I agree.
I just, one day I was like, okay, let me pretend these people aren't here. How would I do this if Arden was just in that building? And I was like, okay, the best way to do this is to just remove other people from the scenario and hope and just put them in charge of, holy crap, everything's wrong, emergency plans.
She can't handle it.
Yes, let's just make sure the school knows how to keep her alive, and I'll do the management stuff remotely.
Yeah, and you know what, actually, so when she's going into 2nd grade now. The kindergarten year was really kind of we'll see what we can do. Last year, I realized by the end of the year, I really should be just texting her instead of texting the health tech, who then calls the classroom teacher, who then sends her down to the nurse, and then all of this back. It's just a lot of extra. And so this year, hopefully, we'll have the 504 before school starts, or relatively within the first week. And that's one of the things that I want to request. But I also know that my daughter, who's very responsible and from the get-go wanted to do a lot on her own, she at times gets overwhelmed by how much, she feels the pressure of like, oh, if I give myself too much, I could make myself go super low, or if I don't give enough, then I'll have to stop and do this again. So it's this tight walk, or a tightrope walk of what kind of responsibility, how much responsibility do you give them, and how much do you say like, oh, well, I want them to still enjoy school and be a kid.
Well, then, yeah, but excuse me, her only responsibility then, in my mind, the way you're setting that up is you have to tell her, look, your only responsibility in this is to read, reread, and be sure. I'll take care of everything else. Like, mommy will make all the decisions, and the only thing you need to do is make sure you're doing exactly what's in the text message. Take 20 seconds, stop what you're doing, read this, make sure you understand it, double check it before you push the button. That's it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, and then it'll grow from there at her pace.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? And now the looping thing is helped a little bit more because I've always was like, if I saw an error going up, I wanted to correct her immediately. I wanted to make sure it didn't get too crazy before, it just was, school's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I feel like it's been better. It hasn't been seamless. But it's been better in controlling her numbers. It's not so crazy, after breakfast or at recess or whatever it may be. Yeah. So I'm hoping that will help kind of cut back the amount of intervention she's going to have to provide for herself during the day.
So it's a weird thing for me to talk about because you and I are talking in August of 2019, right?
Right.
It's the first week of August. No one's going to hear this for like 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
But next week, 6 days from now, I'm recording my follow-up to our looping situation, and it's going to go up right away. So in real time, it'll be up next week. But so I don't want to say something to you now that'll confuse people 6 months later. But
I get it.
So if everybody keeps that in mind while they're listening, a closed loop system right now that Melissa's talking about is not. It's not FDA approved. It's not even from a company. Melissa downloaded this code off of the internet and is using it to help her daughter's Dexcom, talk to her Omnipod. It's making decisions. Now, this is the same code that Tide Pool is at this point trying to move through the FDA to get it approved so that you will be able to use the loop as an FDA approved algorithm on your cell phone, right?
Yep.
We've been using it for a while now. And it's really interesting because imagine you were married to the person who was the love of your life, and I don't know, 18 hours a day was absolutely spectacular and everything was really happy, but every once in a while randomly punched you in the face for no reason. Okay, and so you're wandering through the living room, you're like, "Hey, we're in love. This is great." Oh my gosh, why did that happen? I've been assaulted. And then all of a sudden it's over again. And it's looping is great. Well, here's what I've learned. You're my test. You're going to be my test. You're going to get me ready for next week, Melissa. Okay.
Yay. I'm warming you up.
All right. When there's no food involved, I love the algorithm. It's amazing. Overnight, when Arden sleeps in, when there's no active food in her system, it's damn near perfect. And here's the caveat, you get the 9,000 settings correct that it requires to make those decisions. Getting those settings correct is mind-numbing and nearly impossible, it feels like. Yes. Once you get them correct, it's amazing. Now, here's the problem. For all of you listening to the podcast, to anybody who is, being bold with insulin, thinking about stopping the arrows, like all the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, you are way better at handling a meal than the loop is because you're being flexible, right? You're seeing an arrow jump up that you didn't expect and your brain goes, "Oh, we don't have enough insulin," and you put in more insulin. The algorithm trusts the settings. So if you tell it this is 45 carbs and you put the insulin in and the blood sugar goes up, the algorithm doesn't think anything of it. It goes, doesn't matter. I put in the right amount of insulin for these carbs. This is going to be okay. Except That's not true. And it's not a learning device. It doesn't like the next day go, oh, I remember this from yesterday. This time I'll give it more. It watches it go up. It follows along with what the settings tell it is right, and it's wrong. So what the loop can't do is it can't be flexible, and it can't think about variables. Like 45 carbs of this might not be equal to 45 carbs of that.
Or that,
right,
yep.
That kind of stuff. It can't think that way. And it's so good outside of the food that you start to trust it when you shouldn't trust it. Does that happen, right? Am I right?
Yes, no, I get it.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So amazing technology. For anyone not listening to this podcast and having success, all those other people will try an algorithm, whether it's going to be Omnipod, Horizon, or if it's Tide Pool Loop that you'll one day be able to use probably with any pump. And, I know for sure with Omnipod because they have an agreement with Tide Pool. It's so hard to talk about because it's all so specious at the moment.
Yep.
Right. But I'm telling you right now, closed loop pumping is the future. We are all going to be doing it. It's amazing. If you listen to this podcast, it's going to be frustrating and not at times as good as you are. For all the other people not listening to this podcast, amazing leap. They'll have amazing leaps in their A1Cs and their successes and everything like that. Because, to Melissa's point, when it misses, and it will miss on the meal, and it goes up to 175 and sits there for 3 hours, it will eventually bring you back down. It might take 6 hours to go from 175 back to 80, but it will eventually get you back. Whereas, right now, some people just see that 175 who don't think about it the way we all think about it. And they're just like, okay, whatever. And it sits there forever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's going to be an amazing leap for people who don't listen to this podcast. For people who do listen to the podcast, you're going to sleep way better and be 300 times more frustrated at mealtime. That's my experience with Loop.
Yay. Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of the same similar, I'm still trying to figure out little tricks to, like when those meal times go wrong, how do I trick it to, make sure that they're giving enough insulin? And I sometimes wonder if it's because I have a child, because I know there's a lot of loopers who are adults who have like really amazing straight lines. And I'm thinking like, well, maybe it's, maybe it's more than just food. Maybe it's like reactions. I don't know. Overall, I was really frustrated like you in the beginning, but I think overall, I feel like there's a lot of less thinking about stuff in between meals than there was before, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense to me that you'd be in that situation. And I'm going to tell you, for me, for as far along as I am with this, I don't think about diabetes at all when I'm doing it my way. With Loop, I'm thinking about it more. But I've also slept through the night more days in a row than I have since diabetes existed in our lives.
I know. It is off. That part of it is amazing, actually.
So I'm trading one for the other at the moment. And the reason that it took me so long 6 months ago for you to hear my follow-up to my Loop episode with Katie is because I didn't know how to talk to you about it. And I still am learning. I don't know. Everything I talk about on the podcast was like the culmination of years of effort, right? And then and thinking and fixing things and going, oh, this is where I do this. And like, so when I say something, something to you guys at this point that sounds like a t-shirt slogan, like he's like, stop the arrows. You know what I mean? Like, that was like 6 years of me figuring out how to do that and how to explain it to you guys in like 2 sentences. And so put me into a completely new situation. I'm back in the learning process. I'm doing exactly what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out how to fool it, how to like make it do what I want. Because here's the biggest problem with Loop, right? When it thinks you've put in enough insulin, but you haven't, and you go, oh, it needs more. When you put it in, it takes away all the basal. So if your basal rate is 3 units an hour and you think you need 3 more units, you put the 3 units in as a bolus, it takes the basal away and you're back to zero again. You could spend...
You're like, no.
You're like, you mother... Okay, and just like, I'm going to curse so much when I talk about the Loop on that episode. So,
well, it is. I will tell you, I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person. And in the beginning with those settings, it was mind numbing how much I was thinking. I'm like, is it the basal? Is it the max base? Oh God.
Why is ISF? Here's my one fun thing. Why would an engineer look at a setting and say, okay, what we'll do is when you make the number lower, it'll be stronger, and when you make the number higher, it'll be weaker.
You're absolutely right.
Like, I get how your mathy engineer mind thinks about it, but did you not think about everybody else when you made that
totally
decision?
No, absolutely.
How about like volume? Up is more, down is less.
Yes, totally. 100%. I don't even know. And I feel like, like I'm on the loop. There's like a new Facebook group for looping with kids. And I feel like a lot of parents want to know everyone's settings. Like, what's your settings?
It's not gonna help you.
And I feel like it's almost detrimental to like look at someone and go, oh, that's a 7-year-old girl. And I have a 7-year-old girl.
Yep.
Let me,
mistake.
type in their settings. It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it.
I'll tell you right now, the best piece of advice I got was from somebody who was on the podcast, who by now people would have heard because I recorded her before you. But she told me to stop thinking of the range as a range. She's like, don't think of it as like, oh, I want her to stay between 80 and 100. Think of 80 as when the basal shuts off and 100 as when it turns on. And I was like, ooh, and that like light bulbed me. So I will tell you that there were 3 times I was going to quit. First 3 days, I was like, this is stupid. The second 3 days, Arden said to me, why are we doing this when we are so much better at it than this is? And I was like, Arden, I know you don't listen to the podcast, but right on, kid.
Yeah.
We are way better at this than this loop thing is. Then
we're humans. Yeah, we make judgment calls on the fly. Like, right. Oh, well, we need to do this, not this is what you put in,
Yes. And I think that that's going to be an issue. Hopefully it won't be, but that the expectations of people are way skewed on what this stuff is.
Yeah.
Like they definitely think it's,
a miracle worker,
a robot making heavenly decisions. And it just is not that. It's amazing because why? Because it shuts your basal off when you're getting lower. I mean, and when you try to get high, it jacks your basal up, and it jacks it up like crazy too. Like that part is amazing how it works. That I love. Around food, it's hard.
Yeah. It is hard. I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah. It is definitely, and it's so different than what, other, like you were describing and what you do. It is different. It's hard sometimes to have something work so well and then switch it completely and then have to learn something totally different. So, go ahead.
I stuck with it because of the podcast. Because I believe that this is the way things will be done in the future for most people. And so,
now, will you stick with it? No.
Yes.
Okay.
I gotta sleep. I'm almost 50. It's gonna kill.
I get it.
You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I can't like. I'm not gonna live forever sleeping the way I was sleeping before. And by the way, it wasn't bad. Like I don't want people to think like I was like I'm up all night. I was like, it's just like 1 o'clock. You take a look. Maybe 4 o'clock. You hear an alarm, like that kind of stuff. But broken sleep
is rotten.
It's worse. It's I'd rather sleep 4 straight hours than 6 hours and get up twice.
Yeah,
I
agree.
And it's not get up to go to the bathroom getting up, because that, as long as you don't stub your toe, you don't really wake up. You know what I mean? But getting up and making a decision about insulin or having that adrenaline rush of low blood sugar, that's different.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's something I'm going to stay with because I feel a responsibility to the people listening to this podcast, because I do believe that it's going to be an amazing improvement for most people living with diabetes and using insulin.
Yeah.
And because the sleeping part, and, for Arden as well, when she leaves for college, like this is just, and plus we don't know what it's going to be years from now. I mean, like if it's this now, if it's this good right now, coming from some well-meaning people on the internet, right? Then it's going to get amazingly better. Right.
And honestly, from the get-go, from the moment that we were diagnosed, I have felt that I have entered this type 1 world in a way that was less, alarming, I think, than others, only because I had a Dexcom. I had, a pump. my experience wasn't, what people did 20 years ago. And I look at it and go, oh my gosh, I feel so lucky that I did the Dexcom to me was everything and still is everything. Without that, I feel like I could get rid of the pump and I could get rid of the looping and all of that. But if I didn't know her blood sugar, I would be anxious all the time,
No, I understand. It's just, the people who will tell you, well, before all this stuff, we all lived too. I'm like, yeah, I get you, but this is better. So,
yeah.
It's, it just is. It's having the information is better than not having the information. Okay. So we'll get away from, actually, let's do this right here. I'm going to say something and then pause and then keep talking. Okay. Ready?
Okay.
If you guys would like to hear the conversation I had with Katie DeSimone, go back to episode 227. And if you want to hear the one I did as a follow-up with Jenny Smith, you can go to episode 252. Okay, Melissa, I'll fill that in later when I actually know what episodes they are.
Perfect.
And it's I want to go back to the school thing a little bit because you are in the exact same place I and most other parents find themselves in this moment. You are scared, anxious, seeing people who are probably not really putting in nearly the effort to this diabetes thing that you need, looking for an answer, finding a lot of stone walls. What is it you're going to do?
I don't know. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to, rely heavily on the people I do trust. And, I did a lot of pushback last year on certain things. Like, for example, last summer I asked, will someone change a pump site if, something happens to her, she rips it off or a cannula is bent. And I got, yes, the nurse will do it. And then later in the year, I found out from another type 1, they said, no, it's not, we cannot do it. It's too involved. And then I was never informed of that. So it's just a lot of misinformation and kind of what's told to one family isn't necessarily communicated to all families. So I did a lot of question. I'm going to push back on certain things for example, and they basically, when I did ask, well, why are you saying that you can do it, but then telling another family no? And they had an old Medtronic pump, and I guess it was too involved for the nurse. They said it was too complicated for the nurse to change the Medtronic pump. But my Omnipod pump was pretty easy, and that they probably could do it, that they needed me to contact a trainer to train the nurses. Well, when I contacted Omnipod, they said, we don't train school nurses, which I can understand why. So I offered I could train. I've been doing this now for a year and a half. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing. I could teach them, but I never got a response. So it's been a true battle. And I think at this point, like you mentioned, I think I am going to rely not solely, but mostly on my daughter and take care of herself. She's super responsible and I trust her more. In fact, I started teaching her how to change the pump. And when I spoke to the school board in regards to this, about it, it's like, how can a medical, a nurse not feel comfortable, yet my 6-year-old is capable of doing it? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's too complicated for a nurse, but yet my 6-year-old can do it. I don't get it.
So, Melissa, it does make sense. Let me just be a little more cynical. See, here's the problem. You live in Los Angeles. The weather's beautiful. Nobody's day really gets going till around 11:30. You're living a different kind of wonderful life. People who have never been to LA don't know. I swear to you, nothing happens till 11, 12 o'clock.
You're right.
Right? It's gorgeous there. The weather's fine. There's no humidity. People are beautiful. Cars are beautiful. Everything's beautiful. Life is good. Let me give you a little more Philly, New York about this, okay? They don't want to be responsible. They don't want liability. And as much as they try to shine up a school to make it look like a community thing, it's a political machine.
Right.
Okay. And so I got to learn it early on. My son and daughter's principal of their where their kindergarten and first, second, third, I think fourth, fifth grade was, as I looked back on it, a politician. She smiled and waved and everything was okay. And I came to realize that if I would have walked into that building and the whole building was on fire and I would have found her and said, "Oh my God, the building's on fire," she would have given me the same smile, the same wave, and the same reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And we've got your kid's best interest at heart.
Totally.
Okay, right. So their job, because think about it. You just said like 4,500 kids in that school or something like that, right?
In the district.
In the district. Okay. 4,500 kids. Most of us believe our children are little princes and princesses, and we want them treated very specifically well. If they start doing what you want, then they're going to have to start doing what everybody wants.
For everyone.
And for some reason, they can't separate medical from Billy likes an Eastern sun on his face around 2 p.m. Like, right. Like the difference between a real ask and a BS ask, right?
Totally.
So they just don't do anything. Their job is to do nothing and get you out of the building, and then get somebody else in there and just as minimal as you can, teach the kids this curriculum as best they can, and they're moving you along. They don't, they're not thinking about the things you're thinking about. And even when you describe them, they don't understand them.
They don't.
And if they understood them, they still might not care because they fall back on that. We've had other kids with diabetes here. I actually had a woman say to me before, "Do you know how many kids with diabetes have been through this school? They're all still alive." And I was like, "Oh,
thank you.
Is that the Mendoza line for this? Like, not dying? Wow. Like that's the bar." And so I said, "Well, what are their A1Cs? What were their blood sugars during the day while they were here? How well were they able to think about the things you were teaching them? Were their blood sugars 250 all the time? Were they cloudy? Were they always worried about being the kid who quote unquote passed out at school one time? Like what if we make their lives healthy and good?" Like, I think that's doable. And so when I put it on them like that, and I said, "How about I just take care of this and we keep you out of it?" "Oh no, we have to be very involved, blah, 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 blah," because that's how they always did it. And then I said to them, "You know what? If I'm making the decisions, you don't have any legal liability." And they went, "Okay, when do you want to start?" And that was it. As soon as I took away their liability, they didn't care.
Absolutely. And you know what? This year's which is diabetes management plan that they gave me, I got in the mail at the end of the school year. It actually has somewhere on there, like parents are able to make, decisions against the carb ratio, things like that.
That's the sentence you need. Yep.
Yep. And so, and our endo is pretty awesome. He will, and so that leads me to another, we're going to the endo next week, and I am a little bit nervous about telling him about looping because we've been only doing it since May and we haven't seen him since then. And I don't know how he's going to react or what he's going to say or what he wants for us to do. But I know that, and that was my decision I need to kind of make is like, how independent do I want Chloe? I don't necessarily want him to check the box fully independent, even though she can do a lot, because I know then they have zero responsibility in taking care of her. And so I need that kind of still where, yes, she's mostly independent, but still needs some adult, help at times. So
I'm looking at a text message here from Christina. Christina, nobody knows who you are, so don't worry when I read this. She's trying to get the same thing set up at school, where they make decisions and they've kind of taken her out of it. She said she walked away from the endo's office today armed with a medical plan stating that, quote, "Child self-manages his diabetes with direction from parent through text messages while in class."
Ooh, I like it.
That's perfect. And
that is perfect.
And she's like, "Well, now let's see what they do." When I go in there, and here's the only thing I said to her: be direct, be nice. Remember that you're not asking permission; you're informing them. Right? You're not in there asking if it's okay. You're in there letting them know that this is what's going to happen. And let's get it in. I can do whatever you need to make it comfortable for you. You're not asking permission. It's your kid, right? It's their health.
Right.
It's your kid.
Absolutely.
You're telling them what's going to happen. Imagine if your kid had, cancer, and they needed an infusion of something every day at 1:00 in the afternoon, and they were like, we're not comfortable with that. But you'd say, "I don't care. It's keeping them alive." And they'd go, "Oh, you know what? Cancer. Yeah, I guess so." Because they think of that as more dire.
Yep.
And it's no more or less dire than what you're doing. But your thing doesn't like infuse them with fear. Like, your kid will just get a little dizzy. That's okay.
We'll give them a giant juice box.
They'll drink a juice. Fine. They'll hang out with the nurse. It'll be fun. Yeah, except for the 45 minutes of math that she doesn't get. And then 3 years from now, I think she's got a head injury because she can't add. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
Come on. Like, you're doing the right thing.
I get it.
Yeah, I love it. I think you're going to make out well with it.
Well, thanks. I'm going to try. I mean, every year is worth a try. You know what I mean? And I feel more of an obligation not an obligation, a responsibility for those that are coming. I feel like a lot of type 1 parents don't realize what they can ask for, from a school.
Yep.
Or what, the schools can do and should do. A lot of times they let the schools direct them on what they're going to do. Like, oh, I got the iPad to follow on a Dexcom. Other parents were like, what? They didn't tell us that they gave you an iPad. And I said, well, you need to go in there and say, I want an iPad for the health tech to follow my kid,
Right.
So it's just things like that. I mean, it's just, they're never going to disclose more than they have to and,
right.
Offer more than they have to pay for. And I get that part of it.
Exactly the feeling I have when I get in bed at night and I look over at Kelly and I think, would she be amenable to sex right now? Right. And if she would be, she doesn't tell me that, right?
No,
like I have to ask because she's trying to get to sleep. You know what I mean? Like
I get it.
It's a very
Absolutely.
similar situation. Like, and you're sitting over there thinking, I'd do it, but not if he doesn't say something.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to go right to bed.
Here's the truth. Everyone's looking out for themselves, which is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And the school is doing the same. They're trying to limit their output of cash, their output of manpower, their output of responsibility. The minute they tell you they're going to do something, that's the minute that when they don't do it, you can sue them. And so they're trying to stay out of actionable situations. Totally understandable. And you want the whole world to know, which is beautiful, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for me and for everybody else listening. But let me rain a little bit on that rainbow for you for 1 second. This is the struggle. It's always been the struggle. It's always going to be the struggle. And and there will always be people like you who yell louder and make it in this moment better for the people around. But in that same school district 5 years from now, someone else like you is going to come in, see the same thing, and it's going to start all over again. It's just, it's a cycle. Some things about society are so big, you can't fix them. You can only bump and nudge them into line. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not, see, I've done a thing here where, unintentionally I've brought it back to diabetes, but diabetes is such a big idea that even with a great algorithm or a Dexcom or an insulin pump or all that stuff, you're still going to get low once in a while out of nowhere. You're still going to get high once in a while out of nowhere. There's no perfecting it. Not right now. And it's this situation at school is the same thing. You're just going to have to bump and nudge when things get out of whack, but mostly just trust that the world's been spinning for a long time and you're probably going to be okay most of the time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I feel like I've dropped a lot of wisdom here, Melissa.
Yeah, you did. You really did. Well, actually, I mean, I really do feel like, I think, when it's involving your child, like the mama bear comes out and you're like, you will take great care of my child.
Yeah.
But I think, in reality, you helped me answer a lot of like uncertainty of what I was going to do with my child this year, as far as how much responsibility she was going to have. And I think, I think it's become clear that, and I felt it this way last year too, but that I really do need to trust the people I trust the most to take care of her, and the rest of them that they say are qualified to take care of her.
They're there to call 911.
Totally.
Yeah. That's
yes.
right.
I don't even know if they know how to do a glucagon. I mean, I really don't know, but let's hope that they don't. And let's hope I can get the nasal one so that no one has to mix a powder with a liquid, because that probably is undoable for some of them.
There's another one coming too that's not nasal. It's still injectable, but it's pre-mixed.
Ooh.
And I think that's going to be on the podcast in a few months. So
okay, that's cool too.
But yeah, listen, here it is. It's so funny. You and I just took this episode that I thought I was just going to probably fall in line 6 months from now, and now you made it something I'm going to put out next month, right before back to school.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, because
perfect.
Because this is what people, because you are trapped in the same trap that everyone gets trapped in. And somebody like me, who's so much farther down the path than you, is just up there going, look, a lot of the stuff you're worried about is not going to be a problem. And a lot of the stuff you're concerned with isn't fixable. But here's the way to like negotiate through it without making yourself mental. And by the way, without making the school hate you or turning you into the crazy mom, because that's what they're going to think, right?
Yes.
I can still hear myself standing in that office saying, You don't understand what could happen to her. And I'm like, and I look back now and I'm like, oh, they must have been there like, and because they didn't understand, they must have thought, oh, look, he's out of his mind. Isn't that sweet? And so, and they're never going to understand because they don't have diabetes.
Right.
Right. But
no, absolutely. I feel like I've said that. I feel like I have said that, like you're just not getting it,
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. I haven't gone crazy yet, but I felt moments of it.
The more you explain, no matter how accurate you are, the crazier you sound.
Yeah, no, I get it.
She has to have gummy bears with her at all times. Well, who said something like that? Well,
yeah,
somebody with diabetes. Everyone else hears, hey, there's a wacky lady in the office. What time's lunch? Like they're in a different world. And so take them out of your diabetes world. Like, leave them there for the things you need them for. And don't get me wrong, too. Some of you are listening right now going, my nurse is excellent and this is all bull. Well, yeah, sure. If your nurse is excellent, you're not in Melissa's situation.
Yeah.
And good for you. You know what I mean? Like, and do whatever you want to do. I'm telling you that for 18 hours a day, your kid's at home with you. You're managing the way you're managing. If it's going really well, there's no reason to give that away while they're at school. That's all, no,
that's the exact point. I mean, that is it. It's hard to relinquish control. Someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing. Yep. I'm jealous of the people who have really great nurses who are, working, or even aides that are with their child all the time. It's just not my world.
You're lucky. Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Someone else can come on and has in the past. In the last year, somebody's been on who's like, my kids, blah, blah, blah is amazing. I actually have had on a parent and the person who aids the kid at the school, like in like succeeding weeks. And it's an amazing story. When you have something like that, that's crazy cool. But most people don't. And by the way, your situation, Melissa, to go the other way, is about 1,000,000 times better than a lot of other people's situations.
Yeah,
like, as bad as you think it is, people out there right now are going like, wow, healthy.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, right?
No, I get it. And you know what? I remember listening to one of your podcasts that was someone who privately hired a type 1 college student. Do you know what I'm talking about? And they went into the school and kind of shadowed the kid. And I thought that was so cool. But I also don't have that kind of money to have, someone come in and, do that. Yeah, totally. I thought what an amazing fix to what they're, and they're capable of doing. And I just thought that was so smart to hire someone who is, capable of taking care of their child at school. I mean, that is another example of maybe they didn't really trust the system there too. So
Melissa, anyway, can't your gardener or your cook do it? No?
No, they're busy. We've got a giant yard,
Listen, I think so you're making the point that no matter what situation you're in, there are some tools at your disposal. Mm-hmm. Some people can afford to hire someone to go to school with their kid. That's if you can do that and you want to do that, that's amazing. But there are tools at your disposal too. The mistake I don't want anyone to make is to look at the system and think, I can't change the system. I'll stop, because you're right. You can't change the system. Although some people have made inroads, but there was someone on from Texas a long time ago who literally changed the way their entire school system handled diabetes. But it was an undertaking I'm sure. Was, it didn't happen like with a phone call and an email in time for your kid to go back to school. Right. So, and so I think you just have to, you have to look at the course you're running and just run it. Like, don't run into walls. Don't scream and yell at people who aren't listening. Just do what works. You know what I mean? I agree. In the apocalypse, Melissa, when the zombies are coming for you, you don't stop and go, well, they're going to kill me because I don't have a stick with me. You look around for something else and you keep fighting, right? So you're in that situation. Like, it's not perfect, but stopping's not really an option either.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not as bad as it could be. Like you said, it's not as bad. I mean, we really do have an amazing health tech that loves my child like her own. And that person, if she wasn't at that site, I'd be probably a lot more nervous. But she is there and she leaves for 1 hour. And in that hour time of lunch, I just have to hope and pray everything just kind of falls in line. And, and like I said, train and probably talk a little bit more about what my daughter can do. Like, she's hypo unaware. So but thank God for the Dexcom, because I could be like, hey girl, you need your sugar,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Melissa, we are at the end. I know it probably seems unlike that because it's so easy to talk to me and everything. But I have another call coming up like in a couple minutes, so I have to jump. I will let you know when I'm putting this on. But like I said, I'm very much now leaning towards the end of summer, early fall. So
good.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And,
thanks for having me.
No, I really appreciate it. I really do. I'm sorry I'm jumping so quickly. I usually am more...
no, not at all. Don't worry. I get it.
Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks to Melissa for sharing her insights. I thought it spurred great conversation. I'm really sorry that I sat on this episode for so long, but I was trying to do the right thing. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks again to Contour Next One. That's a blood glucose meter you should know more about. And of course, to Touched by Type 1. You can find them at touchedbytype1.org. And the Contour Next One is at contournext1.com. Go there to find out if you're eligible for an absolutely free meter today. Hey, who remembers episode 53, Terry Lives on a Boat? Well, Terry's going to be back later this week on the podcast to do a follow-up. It's a really terrific conversation, a little longer than they are usually, but I had such a good time. And Terry did a companion blog article to put on my blog to go with it. So, look forward to that is what I'm saying. The way I got Terry back on, by the way, is by asking online for people's favorite old episodes. Who do they want to hear from again? And Terry came up a lot. If you have other such thoughts about people you've heard on the show before that you'd like to hear again, send me an email. Let me know. Maybe it'll happen. Thank you so much for listening to the Juicebox Podcast, for sharing the show with other people, and the wonderful reviews that everyone's leaving on Apple Podcasts through their podcast app. Really cool. Thank you. This show is about to have a milestone month and about to run into a huge milestone for the rest of it. It is almost completely due to how much effort you guys put into sharing the show. I'm giving myself a tiny bit of credit for making the podcast. But I mean, seriously, I could be making this show and you guys don't share it and it just doesn't grow. So thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll see everybody soon. Wash your hands.